Ryan Purvis, I'm the founder of Valuu Ai, and we have a SaaS product that we are bringing to the market to help customers to reach their goals and show the value. We also have a advisory service and a community that works on helping customers in the same way. For me, it's any time that you are using technology to solve a problem where it has been done a way before that probably is less efficient or less effective and hasn't actually helped the business to move forward. And the transformation piece is not so much technology, but it's also the people and how they are empowered to do their work. And that will come down to things like giving them the right tool at the right time, and specifically the right data at the right time. And often that is the key piece to adoption, which is that transformation piece, where the power for the user is that they can do their job in a better way because they've got the right things that they need. Sure. So we used it for a long time. We used it before it was even called OKRs, to be honest. We just didn't know what they were. And it's usually been an experience of trying to understand where someone is trying to get to, or a request that's been provided that isn't very clear. And OKRs are a good way to break that up into what are you trying to achieve, when do you need it done by, and how you're going to measure it. So you could, the sort of twin or brother or sister or whatever you want to use is SMART, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and trackable. At least that's what I use that acronym for. The difference with OKRs is you're supposed to stretch them as well. So you might have 10 objectives that you're trying to reach, but you might only reach 7, and that's a pretty good result. You're not meant to get 100%, which is often the problem with OKRs and how they're implemented. It's a framework that I've used publicly and also I say in hiding, but not everyone's known that I've been measuring things and using OKRs because it hasn't been widely adopted for a long time, and now it's become very widely adopted. And I find often that by having those objectives and the ability to prioritize things, very, very useful. Yeah, and I think this is the most important stuff. So one, I always look for a date, and I think you should always have a number when you set your objectives. So I want to resolve this problem by the end of the quarter, and it needs to impact, 1,000, 10,000, or 10%, 100% of the thing that we're doing. I think that's very important. And the other piece is you've got to have someone that's accountable for that objective. And that accountability is not only being figurehead, but it's also driving the objectives to be completed with its key result. So traditionally we've used the sort of normal tools, Excel or some sort of tool that says it can do OKRs. What we've done now with our own product is we've built our way of doing it, which, is the way that I've always wanted to do it, which is a very nice layered approach. And again, it comes down to being very clear around what's the objective, what's the key results that get you to reach that objective, and who's accountable for each thing. And you break it down as you go down level by level. Objectives are very, I wouldn't say high level, but they're at the top, and you've got subsections, which are key results. And inside there are your tasks. The tasks are very granular. Usually 0 to 8 hours is a task. The key result would be probably, days to weeks to months. And an objective would be weeks to months to 2 years. There's probably 4 things that I look for now to do my measurements around. One would be specifically the user impact. So is the user going to benefit from this or be severely impacted from this? Is there going to be a time or productivity improvement for them? Will there be a cost save of some sort for what we're doing? And then it's really a risk mitigation conversation too, in the sense if we don't do this, is there a greater risk? If we do this, is there less risk? And then the last thing, which is a new thing that I'm incorporating, is the environmental sustainability factors to the work that we're doing. Well, I'm actually going to share one that's not a good story, but I learned a lot from it. That's why I like to always reference it. There was a project that I ran many years ago for a bank for their marketing division where they wanted to automate their processes. And there were things that I hadn't thought about when I was designing the solution, which have stuck with me. Things like I hadn't really thought too much about user experience. I hadn't thought too much about how the processes, the customer give me not processes, but I hadn't actually thought to break them up into small, simple processes. So we were automating big processes that were basically speeding up their failure, not speeding up their improvements. The experience I got from that was to look at things differently, to design from a customer centric point of view or an end user specific point of view, and to have lots of little things that you could do that made up the big things. So very loosely coupled solution, very much like using Lego. We use lots of blocks and then you build them together. And I think if we'd done it that way, which in subsequent solutions I've followed that approach and been very successful with, I think it would be a better benefit to that customer who had a better result. The other reason that I bring that story up is that we were doing this sort of typical big bang approach, which also didn't help. And I think if we just followed what I'd mentioned around small improvements regularly deployed, we'd have better feedback, which means we'd have a better inclination to the right direction to take with the solution. When we've done it the other ways like that, we've seen results pretty clearly and pretty quickly, but it comes down to execution. You've got to deliver. So it's all good and well planning it, but you've got to track it and deliver it. Yeah. And this will start with whatever the problem is to solve. So if we're doing something that's a productivity thing, risk related, cost save, environmental, which is obviously what we're working on now, how you measure and how you show success is going to be part of that approach. The key thing is in my mind, is to have a starting point that you baseline on, and then have benchmarks or snapshots on a regular basis that you can compare to show how you're tracking. And then at the end, confirm where you got to. And this is something that I think is missing. And hence why we built the product. It is that benefit realization at the end to say, well, we started at 0 and now we're up X number, or we started at 0 and we're down X number, or we started at 1 million and we're down to 500, whatever the numbers are. But the point is, there's going to be a constant storyline of where you're going and how you're doing. And I think this comes back to having done, a little bit of exercise around what your objectives are and how you measure them and what the dates are and who's accountable. I think there's a few. One would be prioritization, knowing what work is important and the value it's going to bring. The other is requirements that are not clear, and there's a need to do discovery and understand what they are, and then bring it back to prioritization. And then there's also a reality that not everything can be done. So knowing, even though you prioritize something or you know what the value is, you may not have the resources. It might be bad timing. Those things are all factors. And then I think there's that piece which is around bringing everyone that's involved along the journey. So they need constant feedback loops and to communicate where things are and to be transparent and those things. When you've got all those things working in your favor, I think it becomes very easy to deliver things. And if you don't have those things, or there's a little bit of imbalance, that's where the problems come in and they become to exacerbate. But yeah, and this is the trick. So, it's very easy nowadays, because we all work remotely and we all work hybrid, to have a call and talk high level about the problem and not necessarily solve. I believe that the way to solve a problem is to really go deep on it. And there are a lot of methods, like the 5 whys, for example, like why is it like this? Why is that happening, etc. You can't substitute for experience, but you can learn what you don't know by going deep. So if it's a technical issue, sitting on a call with the relevant people that know what's going on, and keep exploring until you find the solution or find out what's causing the problem. At least then you might know a route to take. And this comes back to being transparent and having a plan. And, when we talk about things around accountability and, what the deadlines are and what the numbers are, this will give you a feel for how important this thing is to be addressed. And again, it's communication and sharing information. So, I'm very adverse to sending lots of emails. I prefer to do calls and IMs and that sort of thing. But even then, I think there's no substitute for a call or a face-to-face discussion to solve a problem. And I think there's also a need to have a central place that's trusted where you can see what's going on. So having that initial value, having the tracked values, having accountability on the objectives, the key results, the tasks, that should all be clear, and it needs to be real time. or as near real time as possible. So this is a very important thing. So when you are looking at resources for a project, it's very important to have defined what the initiative is about and why it's important. Because knowing why it's important and having the support you need from upper management or from the team is critical to success. Once you've got that support known and you've got the commitment to go ahead, putting a team together, will obviously logically based on what you're trying to solve. Whether you're having project managers and architects and all those sorts of things involved will depend on what you're trying to achieve. But you do need to have someone that leads it. And then you need to have the allocation of resources that fits to the scope of the work that has to be done. And this goes back to prioritization. Not everything can be delivered because there's just so many requests nowadays to deliver things. So you need to prioritize. And then the tracking and being visible on where things are and how things are going, and being honest when things are falling behind too. That impacts other things. So to be successful, that goalpost may move to what successful is because the requirements change and the situations change. But if you're constantly aware of it and you're constantly communicating it, then the success is in the fact that you are continuously moving forward with clarity to what the end result will be. And I think that's one of the things that brings a successful initiative to a close. But I also think it's why a lot of them fail. It's because people don't share the information, and then they also don't look back and say, we set out to do this project and we never really realized the value because we actually didn't check if we got the value. And that's another reason why we built the product, and then the route we're going is to make sure that people are successful. And if they're not reaching the objectives, we want to capture the lessons learned as well. So accountability, we've talked about it in this conversation a lot, but that accountability is not only being the figurehead, as I said, but it's also carrying the way. It's being a motivator sometimes. It's being the driver of things that they need to be driven. It's asking questions. It's challenging things. It's enabling the team to do their best work. And it's not necessarily getting down into the weeds every time, but sometimes you need to be capable to get down with the team and understand what their challenges are or see it from their point of view. I think leadership is a very broad term, more than just being at the front or on the top. It's really joining together. And as I say, from a sponsorship point of view or supportive point of view, it's making sure that the right things are happening, the right due diligence is in place, the right risk management's in place, and obviously that the initiative doesn't cost more than the benefits that it's trying to realize.